Could you run us through again just how events have unfolded today? It all started at about 9:45 local time, a gunman entering a cafe in central Sydney, taking several people hostage, and now that hostage situation is over, but we don't yet know what's happened to the gunman.
We don't know. The New South Wales Police, for whom we are relying on our information, have said the siege is over. Details on injuries and deaths to follow. So they have not confirmed, in fact, that there are deaths. We are hearing that, as James said, in an echo chamber with journalists reporting each other. But we have seen people being removed. The lights are back on. We have seen people being removed, and they are injured. They're bleeding. And we know that 2 people have been taken to hospital. Other people being treated at the scene, then to be taken to hospital. So we're looking at least 4 people injured from what I have just seen with my own eyes and counted. And possibly, if the reports are correct, some of those injured were actually hit in the head, gunshot wound to the head, and that person was a police officer. So perhaps they are amongst the dead. This is all unclear. What we do know is that the police are saying the siege is over, which must mean that the gunman has been incapacitated somehow, either taken into custody or shot, and that all the people, including the injured, are being removed from that scene, which we can now see is light again after so long of it being dark when the lights were switched off around 7 o'clock, I think, local time. And then for hours afterwards, until then there was light from gunshots and light from outside, and now it's lit from inside. So the siege is over, but what that really means in terms of detail, we don't yet know.
And Irris, could you tell us more about the man that Australian media have identified as the gunman, Man Haron Monis?
What we know is that he's a self-styled religious leader, perhaps a fringe Islamist. He has an unsavoury personal past in that there are sexual charges against him. He's been charged over the involvement in the murder of his ex-wife, but the indecent assault charges, and there's a number of them, are not to do with his family. He's also been charged and found guilty of sending letters to the families of Australian servicemen who were killed abroad or who were serving abroad. So in Australian terms, that's an unsavoury list of offences that he's involved with, but there was no indication that he would commence something like this. Taking people hostage is another step up and a different kind of involvement than he's had. So all of those things together, he was known to police, obviously, he was known to the media too, and although he was involved in these Islamist groups from a fringe perspective, he wasn't involved in any of them. He hadn't gone to Syria or to Iraq himself, and I don't know if this particular action was expected from him. It's a step in a different direction to actually take people hostage in this manner, and for an end like this, such as we're now witnessing.
I would imagine, Irris, too, that given he was from Iran, that he was a Shiite Muslim and not a Sunni Muslim, so the odds of him actually wanting to do this as an act of support for ISIS would probably be somewhat a bit of a stretch.
That's right. I mean, all those sectarian things, issues that we haven't even considered until this point because we only knew his identity an hour ago. But what you're saying is absolutely right. Nevertheless, if all the reports that we were hearing on Twitter this morning were correct, he was requesting that an ISIS flag be sent to him. Why would a Shia cleric want the flag of a Sunni group unless he was identifying or trying to identify himself with them in some way? It's interesting, his flag, the flag that he had hostages put up initially did look like the ISIS flag when you looked at it just quickly. Then when you started reading it, you saw that it wasn't that, but he did request one to be sent. So all of it, this aspect of it has been strange from the morning, and no one could explain that. And now when you think of the possibility of him being a Shia cleric, or not even cleric, he's a self-styled cleric, a Shia Iranian, throwing his support behind Sunni ISIS, it's very odd.
Irris, this comes a few months after Australia increased security measures. Do you think we might see security measures tightened even more after this?
I think that's highly likely. I think the nature of the debate has been one about civil liberties, and this kind of event all over the world, not just in Australia, tends to railroad civil liberties. I'm generally reporting from Jerusalem, and you see that there all the time. So, yes, I would say we might see a different kind of security presence at public places in Australia, or we might not. But the knee-jerk reaction after this is to tighten security and that civil liberties take a back seat to safety, to the safety of citizens. And you can see why people think like that. It's hard to protect civil liberties at a time of stress like this.
And certainly, given Australia prides itself as being the land of free and easy lifestyle, this is certainly something that runs very much contrary to that mentality, doesn't it, Irris?
That's right, and I think Australia's Prime Minister, who has been behind these moves, these anti-libertarian moves, if you like, even he alluded to that in his first speech today, when he said Australia is a peaceful, free and generous nation and it should remain that way. But the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. That's what it says on all the war memorials in Sydney. And that is something that is very much, it's a different kind of vigilance than it was during World War II, when it was an actual war that Australian soldiers went to fight in. This is a war where you have to protect citizens at home. And that, I think, the question of where you draw your boundaries in this kind of situation is always one that people are going to fight about, and that Australians will be fighting about, I think, in even more than they have been after this incident.
No longer the land of a fair go.
No longer the land of the fair go. Two Australian journalists sitting sadly talking to each other during the end of this siege. I mean, it is looking at these pictures, these images that we are seeing, have been seeing for the past half hour. It's bizarre to me. I have to remind myself that I'm in Australia watching this, that I'm not in the Middle East where I normally report from. This is so unusual in an Australian context, so unusual in an Australian summer context particularly. It's almost bizarre. I've spoken to a number of journalists today covering this who said to me, I cannot believe that this is going on here. I can't, even though I'm here, I can't believe it's happening.